After another series of incredible races in the Monster Energy Cup Series, we're down to the final 4 drivers who will compete at Homestead for the championship next weekend. Those drivers are Brad Keselowski, Kyle Busch, Kevin Harvick, and the likely favorite Martin Truex Jr. I'm joined by our resident NASCAR expert David Flynt to break it all down. So David, how many more shots will Jimmie Johnson have?
I give him 5 more seasons. He's 40 years old, by far the elder statesman at Hendrick Motorsports starting next year once Dale Earnhardt Jr. retires. He and Chad Knaus are arguably the most potent driver-crew chief combo ever in the sport. I don't see him losing a step. As much as I'd not like to see him win an 8th title, he's going to have another chance to, maybe multiple chances to. I give him 5 years to do it. By that time, Rick Hendrick will have a young development guy in the pipeline ready to take the seat.
Well, let's talk about what it meant to NASCAR. Johnson blew a tire, was eliminated this season from winning his 8th Cup title. What does this mean for Johnson and for NASCAR?
I don't think it means as much as people would like to think it does, just because Jimmie Johnson and Chad Knaus are so good and work so well with one another, they'll find a way to come back. Blown tires happen. They're more luck than anything, but Hendrick as a whole, other than Chase Elliott and spurts, has been down across the board this year.
Now, moving on, Matt Kenseth won a race at Arizona. It was kind of unlikely victor of that race. Is this the last we've seen from Kenseth this year?
It's the last we've seen once next week at Homestead is over of Kenseth in a competitive car. He might still have the drive to get it done, but he's too old to build around at the age of 45 when a lot of his peers at that age are either already out, Gordon and Stewart, or on the way out, Dale Jr. And he wants too much money. Sponsors aren't willing to put together the dollars that they used to.
So you're saying he's done after the season?
In a competitive car, if he wants to go to a back marker, he might be able to run 15th with it, but I don't see a former champion like him taking that ride.
Now, the ultimate question, who is going to win the title next weekend?
It's going to be Kevin Harvick. All 4 cars, I think, have a legitimate chance. I mean, Martin Truex, the second best average finish on a mile and a half in history, only to Bobby Labonte's 2000 championship year. And then you've got Kyle Busch, who arguably, maybe not arguably, the most raw driving talent of anybody we've seen in this generation.
Well, tell me this. I'm not really familiar. Is it whoever wins this race obviously wins the title, but how close are they in points?
They come in dead even. The way the format works is the top 4 are reset at 5,000 points apiece. And for only those 4 drivers, stage points do not apply.
Oh, I see. Yes, because they changed the format a few years ago, correct?
Right.
Okay, so who is the unlikely victor in this 4?
Brad Keselowski, just because they haven't been on par with their own standard lately. They kind of backed their way into that 4th position last week at Phoenix, partially because of the luck of Denny Hamlin blowing a tire. Hamlin was in position to get that spot until that happened, and Chase Elliott was 1 spot short of winning and getting himself in. So for especially Keselowski and the Penske guys, they're going to need to find some speed, but he and crew chief Paul Wolfe have always been known to try contrarian strategies, and more often than not, they've worked.
So who has the best crew? I mean, and I think a lot of people don't realize in NASCAR that it really depends on your crew, how your driver actually does. So who do you think has the best crew?
Kyle Busch, simply because he's Joe Gibbs Racing, and Joe Gibbs Racing, rumor is in the garage, they have better pit guns. Their pit stops for tire variety tend to be 3 or 4 tenths of a second faster every round. They can change 4 tires in 11.2 seconds.
That's incredible. That's one thing I love at the part of racing that I think is so interesting is watching them go into the pits, because it is such a skill. And I think that it's like in other sports you have this timeout, but in racing, the timeout is the most important part of the race.
Right. The time you're stopped in your pit stall can determine whether you win or lose a race.
Right. And like you said, that his pit team is wonderful, and I think personally that puts a big difference in the race itself. And
that also depends on where they qualify. Where you qualify also determines your pit selection.
Who was starting at the pole? Do we know?
We will not know that until Friday.
Okay, and then that depends on, obviously, who starts at the pole, where you start. So, David, thank you so much for joining me. This was a wonderful discussion, and I'm excited about the winner. That's all the time. Thomas will be joined at the lounge for a little FBS playoff picture coming up next.